Did they see that?
That owl's pretty active.
He's practicing piano.
We're ready. Okay. Call the meeting to order. Mayor Mann has asked me to run the meeting today because he is on COVID restrictions. We do not have a quorum at this time, so we'll skip initially some of the issues that we have to vote on and go on to report issues. Item number 2 is public comment. There's no public comment. Should also mention that following members have been excused: Selene Richens, Denise Anderson, Mark Johnson, and Michelle Kafusi. And then we have some absences because we don't have a quorum. So let's see here. The audit report, I believe you have to vote on it.
Probably number 5 would be the first thing.
Pass on that one. Pass on 4. ARPA funds update.
Okay, that will be me.
Okay, Michelle.
So this is in regards to the $50 million local government ARPA funds that the state put out for competitive applications. And you all submitted those in September. They've been reviewing them. We're hearing that they'll make those decisions and notify the cities in mid-November. So there was $50 million available. We've been told there was $1.5 billion in requests for that 50 million that they initially put out available. So very competitive. We are also hearing, and this is not official, but there's a good possibility that they'll put another couple $100 million in that fund and then just go after they score the project, go down and fund the projects until they run out. So we are hopeful that they'll put an extra couple $100 million in the pot.
Yeah, and if you guys ever need any help applying for those funds, if they do another call for applications, MAG staff can help your cities identify projects. I think this last one was oriented towards water, sewer, telecom type projects. They may open it up to new topics as well, as what we've heard from some of our legislative affairs specialists. And so just keep us in mind if that comes available again. We're happy to help out.
Do we know if there's many requests as far as fiber goes, projects?
I don't have an accounting of what the state
Yeah, we
receives.
didn't get a breakdown of what the projects were.
Okay.
I know we put in at least one request as of last night's council meeting in Summit County for an ARPA, for a grant for fiber.
For how long?
It's for how long? I can't tell you. We put in for $7.5 million
Okay.
to serve one completely unserved part of Summit County. Whether we're going to get it or not, it's only, I think there's only $10 million available. But we had this one section of the county with about 700 parcels in it, about 300, almost 400,000 that has no service. Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
This is Marty. This is Mayor Larson from Genoa. Can you hear
Yes.
me?
We can hear you, but
Okay. One of my councilmen is going after these funds, and he indicated that we had to have a resolution saying we wanted these funds. We're just going for the fiber optic in our city, and that needed to be done by Monday. And that there was only 10 million. I think earlier you said there's 50 million.
And do we know, I'm not sure, was there a separate pot for
Yeah.
fiber? So the 50 million is likely separate from the fiber pot of money.
Okay, so we're having a special council meeting to set a resolution saying we want to do this because I was told it needed to be done by Monday. Is that true?
that's what I've heard. That's why we passed the resolution last night. I'll arm wrestle you for it.
Okay, thank you.
There's also chatter that there is $1 billion on the sideline at the state, still waiting to be appropriated. And that's in play this next legislative session. I don't don't know what the source of that is. I think it's surplus state of Utah funds. It could have some ARP funds in it. So I'm not sure.
And of course, there was news today that Congress might be close to passing the infrastructure bill, and that's likely to result, I believe, in a couple of $1 billion coming to the state that we can all try to grab for ourselves.
Yeah.
All right, anything else, Michelle? Okay, I believe we now have a quorum.
Yes.
There's 11 of us here, so we can start back with the original, action item number 1. If anybody's read the meeting minutes for May 27th, I'll accept the resolution to, a motion to approve the
I
minutes.
so moved.
Is there a second? Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. Next item, the annual audit report from Squire and Company. They are online, I assume?
Yes.
Yes. May I share my screen?
Yes, of course.
Okay. What I have here, and everybody should see, let me know if it's not there, but I've got a copy of the financial statements, the draft copy that I believe was sent in your packets. Is that what everyone can see on screen?
Yep.
Okay,
You can see.
great. So we're going to just spend some time going through 2 reports. One would be these financial statements, and then secondarily the compliance package, which is the second report that was provided to you. Just as a highlight, let's just go through the table of contents quickly. Within the financial section, you can see individual page numbers and items there highlighted in bold. I've mentioned this before, but if you didn't have a whole lot of time to read the whole financial statements, if you took some time and just read the management's discussion and analysis, that would give you a broad overview of the happenings of the association for the year. So that's a 5-page read as opposed to a 37-page read. As it relates to basic financial statements, we have the government-wide financial statements as well as the fund financial statements. Those fund financial statements is where we will typically focus our time in that those are on a basis that is more of a budgetary basis, as opposed to your government-wide financial statements, which are more of a private sector business presentation. So you're more familiar clearly with the fund financial statements as they're on a budgetary basis. The remainder of what's there really just is support of those basic financial statements, along with some other information and required supplementary information. The required supplementary information relates primarily to disclosures required because of your participation in the Utah retirement system, and picks up your proportionate share and presents that for multiple years. I want to turn just quickly to this page, which is our auditor's report opinion page. On the second page of this document, as you all know, our job as auditors is to issue an opinion on the financial statement. The opinion we'll be issuing tonight is what's indicated at the top of this page that's presented. But basically it says, in our opinion, the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So as we mentioned, we say that's the best grade we can give as auditors, and that is the grade we're giving tonight as it relates to the financial statements themselves.
Hey, Dave. Mayor Mann had some questions on this. I don't know if you want to ask those, Mayor Mann, or but just kind of there's the whether or not we need to amend our budget with some of the CARES Act funding, et cetera. I don't know, Mayor Mann, if you want to ask those questions.
Sure, I'll ask them that, and you can just take them in order that makes sense as you go through this. On the note where it talked about how we're doing the compliance report, towards the end, it said there was some discrepancies in in budget planning between how much CARES money was planned to be spent versus how much was actually spent. And
Okay,
they recommended that we adjust our budgets to conform. And then the management response was, we'll look into it. And so I was just curious as to whether we had and whether it was necessary or not.
yeah. So let me address that here in just a minute or so, if that's okay.
That's okay. The other question I had was, when I looked at the discretionary amount in the fund balance carryover year to year, that has been going down. It looks like it's trending down. Is that anything to be concerned about?
Okay,
And I don't know, we haven't got there yet, but when you get there, that's another question.
okay, you bet. Other questions you have, or those the two?
There were three. I just can't remember the third, but I'll think of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can't remember it either.
Sounds great. Yeah, so let's jump right into this. This is the management's discussion and analysis, like I said, and that's about a 5-page synopsis. Then you have your government-wide statement. So there's a statement of net position, a statement of activities. And then we have the governmental fund, the balance sheet. So this is your fund financial statements. The balance sheet is a point in time presentation. And so it's as of June 30th, 2021. Here are your assets, liabilities, fund balances in the various categories that are presented. So overall, as noted there, total assets of 24.9 million, with 21 million of that being in cash. As it relates to the liabilities, some accounts and wages, contracts payable, overall total liabilities, 22.5 million. The big number there is that state unearned revenue amount. What that represents is those monies that have been advanced primarily from UDOT that haven't yet been spent as we're still working through the projects there. And so from a revenue recognition perspective, even though we've received the cash and it's in the bank, we will recognize that revenue as we incur the costs associated with those projects. Finally, so then the fund balance categories there have some set aside for the revolving loan program, which is money that is in its own separate account, if you will, used for that program specifically. There's an assignment there for aging and family services, and then a remaining unassigned balance of 831,000 at year end, so at June 30th, 2021. This statement, page 12, is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances. So this is the activity for the year. And Mayor Mann, this is the one that's probably presenting what you're observing as it relates to a decrease, if you will, in fund balance. Before we get there, just the presentation is revenues. Those revenues are as presented there, significantly higher than in years past. And I like to say this year is all about COVID, and those revenues as well as the expenditures you see presented are, the increases that we see from prior years at least are primarily exactly that, from COVID and the expenditures and the associated revenue from those. As it relates to, the deficiency, so overall fund balance decreased by that 185,000 that's indicated there for the year. The trend there, really what this represents in my view and in my evaluation of things, really is the fact that the association, from my understanding, agreed to administratively take care of the COVID stuff, programs, if you will, and incur or cover the cost of those administratively. And so a good share of what you see here as far as a decrease represents the costs associated with doing that overall. And
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So there was, how much was it that the county, $20 million from the county? We were trying to figure out how to, from Utah County, we were trying to figure out how to administer that, and if we would pull some money out of that for administrative purposes. And the mayor's requested that we try and fund administration another way so that the full amount of money could go out to businesses. And we also followed that here in Wasatch and Summit County as well.
Right, right.
An additional 10 million we administered in Summit, Wasatch, and specifically for Park City, and we also did not charge any admin. We incurred those costs.
Yep, and we took that out of our rainy day fund that we've been putting money in because we figured that during COVID it was raining.
Yes, yep. So you might ask, and this will be a follow-up really to your question from a budget perspective. I'll turn to that quickly here. This page is a presentation of the budget to actual. So you can see when we had an original budget that was 24.5 million, we adjusted that to 26.8. And then that actual amount is the true revenues and expenditures for the year. You can see the variances to the right. Yeah, COVID was a bit tricky as it related to trying to figure out the timing of when we were going to spend those funds and make all that work. And so, yeah, this is really, in my mind at least, reflective of the fact that, yeah, we just, because of the uncertainties related to COVID and when we would, disperse those funds, if you will, we took our best shot. And it turns out that, yeah, overall, we recognized that 12.9 million more in revenues than what we budgeted. But the opposite is also true, and that is on the expenditure side, that the expenditures were up by a little more than that overall. And so really it's just we took our best shot. As things come through and the spending happens, then we present that as what actually happened. Nothing overall to be concerned about from the perspective of, if we were looking at this and said, oh, expenditures were higher by 13 million and we didn't have revenues to offset that, then there would be a real concern. But in this situation, obviously that's not the case. And really what's pushing this is those expenditure-driven grants specific to the COVID stuff. As it relates, Mayor Mann, to our comment, and we'll look at that as we go through those other reports. Yeah, our invitation really isn't one of, you have the opportunity throughout the year to amend your budget up through basically the end of the year to do that. And this is reflective of the fact that you did modify at some point throughout the year that final budget. We're not suggesting that you go and re-modify for 2021. Our invitation really is to see if we can hone in a little better and identify timing of expenditures and associated revenues on a go-forward basis as we continue to budget for future years, and probably took maybe a little harder look at it, towards the end of the year when we have the opportunity to modify and change to the final budget. Does that make sense? Whoops.
We can't.
Click, you're muted.
I realized we got a lot of money and we had no time, or we didn't have a lot of window to plan how to spend that. So
Right.
I just want to make sure that we were doing what we were supposed to do, and it sounds like we are.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
And maybe I could point out too with that we didn't always bring everything to the executive council, but like the aging department, the aging committee reviewed the increased funding for Meals on Wheels and in transportation. You know, those were all reviewed by the subcommittees, but not necessarily with the executive council.
I think that most of us probably went through a similar situation where, of course, we had to modify our budget. I know we made several budget amendments for the year, planning on making a year-end one, as we pretty much always do.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that everything is,
Yeah, that was what I was gonna mention is we're seeing this quite a bit. I mean, other governments, and you maybe have seen this in your governments as well. As you do that, is trying to hit this target, which is constantly moving, becomes difficult.
I'll ask Andrew, how difficult would it have been, or going forward, how difficult would it be to bring us these budget amendments during our periodic meetings?
Yeah, it's not a problem. Typically, what we have in a normal non-COVID year is our budget is based off of contracts that we already have in place and signed. And so we very rarely will have any issues with that. And we kind of have an agreement that if we do receive additional funding, that we go ahead and get that out, because we've got, you know, a short time frame to do that. We'll try and be better, though, to send out at least to the minimum some emails and just say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is this new program. But we've always tried to do it at least within that department, like the aging committee or other committees, CDBG, et cetera, working through them, which some of you sit on those committees. But yeah, we can definitely keep people more in touch on it.
Just hard to keep up with all the free money people want to give us.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
Free
gonna
money, emphasis on free. Right?
That's going to create an issue that we're going to be mindful of as we have additional COVID funding. Say, for instance, our Meals on Wheels and American Fork has gone up 400% or something like that. And you know, quite a bit of the increase. When we bring somebody on to Meals on Wheels, we can't take them off if we have a reduction in revenue, because then that takes a fragile person and makes things more insecure for them, right? So we always try to make sure that we can, you know, looking out into the future and have some buffer that we can keep that going until we may get some fundraising or something like that to make up those differences in that. But we don't stop providing meals to seniors.
Right.
And any other comment, rest of the executive council on this? Okay, you're hearing none.
Yeah.
Proceed with the discussion.
Okay, yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about with regard to the financial statements themselves, unless there are more questions. If not, let's move to the compliance reports. That should be displayed on your screen there now. The compliance reports really are reports with regard to our report on the single audit that we do, as well as the state compliance audit that we do. This is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards that just indicates and shows what disbursements were made throughout the year, specific to federal programs. You'll notice here 21.019, that is the majority and lion's share of the COVID money that we were referring to and talking about. So yeah, expenditures specific to that for the year with us 24.3, almost $24.4 million for the year. So this is just a presentation. Overall, $31.2 million in federal expenditures during 2021. As it relates to our financials or to our reports and what we do specifically, this report is our report in accordance with government auditing standards. And we look at two things here really, and that's the bolded items that you see. Internal control over financial reporting. As we go through the process here, we assess and look at your internal controls. and issue our report. The summation of our report and the way we present that is really down in this paragraph that starts with our consideration. But basically we say during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weaknesses. So once again, kind of an A grade there. We also look at compliance and other matters. And there, the very last sentence of this page, so the results of our test disclosed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. So another A grade there. The next report is the one specific to the single audit itself and the major programs that we test. Our opinion is indicated here where my cursor is, opinion on each major federal program. And what our opinion there is another A grade, but in our opinion, the association complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct material effect on each of its major federal programs for the year. If I go a little further, there's a presentation of what we did test specific to our federal programs. Those are indicated here. This is what we selected as major programs. So we looked at your coronavirus relief fund, that 21.09, money from the Treasury. We also looked at the aging cluster, as well as the social services block grant. So as mentioned previously, our testing of those, the results was an A grade with regard to what we saw in the opinion we're issuing. So again, commendable from that perspective. It was really a workout this year as it relates to the new monies and all the testing associated with COVID, but we got through it and we appreciated all the help that we were able to get from all those at MAG that allow us to get our jobs done and help us in that process. So finally, we have the state compliance reports. That's what's indicated here. The top is an indication of the programs that we did select and were asked to test. We do this in accordance with the state compliance audit guide that's issued by the state auditor's office. Again, we issue an opinion here, and that opinion is down here at the bottom. In our opinion, MAG complied with the state compliance requirements referred to above for the year ended June 30, 2021. And then Mayor Mann, this is the other matter that you'd mentioned, specific to the fact that you were over budget as it relates to the COVID-19 expenditure side of things. And we do this as part of our testing specific to what the state auditor's office asked us to do in their guide. And when we do have something, we end up needing to report that, and that's why this shows here. If I rank this in terms of importance or level of concern, things of that nature, what we do as auditors, and it kind of describes that down a little lower here, but when we identify deficiencies or have issues, there's kind of three categories. One would be the category of a material weakness. That's the ones that would be the most severe. Then you have significant deficiencies. That's one step below that. And then you have items that are in this category of other matters. And so what we're trying to present here is that this isn't a huge issue, in that it is an other matter, and we're just required to report it as part of the work that we do for the state auditor's office. So finally, we look also at internal controls over compliance as it relates to state compliance. And again, down here at the bottom, we did not identify any deficiencies that we consider to be material weaknesses. So another A grade there. So with that, are there any questions, or did we get there?
Any further questions from the executive council?
Sounds like a good audit.
Hearing none. I think we're ready for a motion to approve the annual audit report.
I move that we approve the annual audit report.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Was there a
We already-
second?
Yes, wait a second.
Mayor Wolfman.
There's a non-verbal second.
We heard him
I
here.
said second.
We heard
Head
him.
nod.
I said it. I relaxed.
If I
You guys
could,
aren't saying without swearing, so.
if I could
All right.
just, if I could just express appreciation, once again, appreciate all those that we're able to work with, and they're very helpful, very accommodating. It makes our jobs a lot easier when we get that. So we really appreciate that, and just commend all those that are involved with the audit, Steve and his staff, and all the others as well, and the good job that you do. So we just appreciate that.
Thank you for your help on this.
Thank you.
We are ready for item number 4. Michelle can tell us about Juneteenth
Yes.
holidays.
As you
Everybody
all-
gets an extra day off.
That's what we're hoping. As you all know, this past summer, Juneteenth was added to the list of federally recognized holidays. Currently, now that that's officially recognized, there's 11. MAG officially observes 9 of the 11, so we do not observe Columbus Day. And that changed when we went to 4/10s. We took Columbus Day out of the holidays to equal out our 4/10 schedule. And then Juneteenth. The 7 associations in the state, Andrew met with all the executive directors, and they're all asking their governing boards to approve the AOGs to recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. And so we're coming here to ask approval if MAG can start recognizing Juneteenth. And just for information, other holidays that we also observe, Pioneer Day, and then we have a floating personal preference day that employees can use at their discretion.
So as a consideration to pass this, Michelle, tell us, define Juneteenth for us. Tell us what it's all about.
That is.
I can tell you all about
No, I guess anybody's getting off on
it. Yeah, it's when after the Civil War, it took a while for the news that the Civil War was over. And I'm named Andrew Jackson. The War of 1812 and the Battle of New Orleans in 1814 was fought after the War of 1812 was over. They just didn't know about it yet. The war was over a couple months before the battle. Anyway, so the people who were enslaved in Texas didn't find out about the end of slavery until Juneteenth. Yep. And so it's a big celebration in Texas and other areas and things, and it's becoming more and more of that. So. And we're 70% federal funded. Yes. Yep.
So it's appropriate that Andrew Jackson explain this to us.
All right.
You had skin in the game.
That's right.
Any discussion from the executive council? Anyone like to make a motion?
Oh, to approve, to approve adding Juneteenth to the list of mandatory holidays.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, no. Good.
How
All
does
right,
this affect
you're
the
unanimous.
budget?
It doesn't, because I mean, it's just the same if we work or we don't work. It's, we're still getting the salary off of it. It's interesting with Cinco de Mayo that's celebrated. I don't know if people know what Cinco de Mayo is, but it was the French were was looking to attack California through Mexico, and the Mexicans defeated the French coming into California. So it's like, people, what is it? What is it? Well,
That was when California was Mexico too.
yeah,
That's a really big deal in
yeah,
Mexico.
yep.
Not to drink more tequila.
Yes.
All right, we are up to item number 6, upcoming legislative discussion. Who is leading this discussion?
six or
wanted to-
five.
We wanted to, we did five
We did five earlier.
Yep.
Before the poll.
Mhm. We wanted to open up the discussion to the executive council as we approach the legislative session in January 2022. We don't meet with you again until the end of February, and by that time, we're at the tail end of the session. And so we wanted to get some feedback from our executive council. What's on your radar for the legislative session? What would you like MAG to be focusing on?
So I'm very concerned about housing and how the legislature will treat it. So I have been at some meetings talking about the missing middle. I don't know if you know what the missing middle is, but it's basically duplexes, fourplexes, 6 and 8plexes. It's not the big high story, high density. But in our Chamber of Commerce, Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce Growth and Prosperity meeting today, they had a section on housing and they had a panel discussion. One of the panel members was Jake Andre, who's a big part of the housing discussion at the legislature. And he made a comment, and I don't know if anybody else picked up on it. My ears are very keen to what he has to say. That his comment was to remove barriers for high density. Well, removing barriers means allowing high density in residential zones in the city. And in the missing middle discussion in Salt Lake, a component part of that is that if in fact they do allow that in various, if they force cities to have to allow that within residential zones, they also are talking about negating any parking restrictions that the city would have on that. So in other words, if you had an eightplex come in next door to your house and you had 16 people living there, there may not be parking requirements or restrictions, which creates a huge problem in the neighborhood. And we in Orem have worked very hard to pass laws where we actually don't allow a residential zone to be changed to a high density zone. But we've done that with the aspect that we're putting high density in 5 districts along State Street so that we're strategically placing where it goes so that it's near mass transit, it's near high traffic areas, and it's walkable areas so that we can keep the high density out of our neighborhoods, but not that we get rid of high density because we have a need for it. 40% of our city lives in rentals. We're growing by 1,000 people a year. That means we need room for 400 new rentals every year in the city as a minimum. So anyway, but what I'm saying is that the legislature, because they're basically run by developers and real estate and builders, feel a huge pressure because we're 50,000 units short in the state of Utah. And they're looking at, from what I see, a one size fits all. So they're looking at how do we get growth out in the cities. And as Jake Andrade said today, the way they plan on doing that is to remove barriers. So removing barriers means that as I view it, is that the state legislature will in fact override what a city has and require certain things of the city. We saw a little bit of that last year with the ADUs and some of the requirements, the 23 requirements that they have. And we started out with 3, and now I think we're up to 7 that you have to meet. And so this is going to continue. And so my concern is that we don't get run over by the legislature. I know in the city of Orem, they're very concerned about protecting the residential neighborhoods. We as a city are very concerned about strategically placing high density where it makes sense and allowing it. But you know, if it comes to where they say you're not doing the job, I could see where they would come in and say, all right, X amount of zones are going to have X amount of missing middle high density. You know, maybe 30-year zones are going to have 20% area where the missing middle could go in. And again, your parking restrictions would be taken away. This is all just supposition, but I think it's important to watch out. I went to a meeting at the Capitol 2 years ago. Jake Andre was there. He's a friend of mine. I like him. But at that meeting, he stood up and said, I don't like city councils. I don't trust them. They're mostly just a couple of housewives that had one specific issue they were concerned about, and they stayed on the council. And we don't need to pay attention to them. We've just got to do what we've got to do. That kind of is the attitude up there. So anyway, I would really encourage MAG to, I know Andrew always does, but to be really on the lookout so that we can head off legislation that could be very detrimental.
I agree 100% with you, Mayor. We've watched this coming. I guess I call it the field of dreams mentality. If we build it, they'll come. It's not they'll come as if we build it, it'll become affordable. Well, I drive across Orem and I think to myself and everywhere else, and I think, how many do we have to build before they become affordable? All these developers, which the vast majority are legislators,
They're all building Class A.
they're all building but they're not cheaper.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think probably this is ought to be our main number one concern this upcoming session, because they threatened several years ago that the first thing they were going to do is turn zoning over to the area agencies. So MAG would be our zoners instead of our cities and county zoning departments.
But MAG would be under pressure.
Oh,
from
yeah,
the
MAG would have to
legislature.
follow their
So-
rules.
So they would come in and say, MAG, all right, this is what you've got to have. You're going to have X amount of zones with X amount of.
Many of them
missing
think the
middle
reason
density.
it's not affordable is because there's not enough. We have too strict zoning laws.
Right, and that is the general feeling in the legislature, is the problem that is creating all of this is the city zoning laws.
Yeah.
And the
And
city
the
zoning
counties.
laws have got to be changed, and the cities are not willing to do it. No city is willing to do it. None of them are out there pursuing it. And so we're gonna have to override and push forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Borrowing yourself out of debt.
Okay.
Something the league better get behind too.
Now, the league, I think, will support us.
Yeah. UAC will support it all.
And we've talked about it at UAC.
Well, there's more than just this area that the legislature year to year continues to try to take away our ability to manage and govern our cities. And I think MAG ought to target any and every one of those and go after them. I think that control needs to stay locally.
Well, and it's important to remember that each city is not a city of its own right. It is a political subdivision of the state, which means that the state legislature has all encompassing control over each city
If they choose to take
if
it.
they choose to take it.
That's our
We do
county.
not have independence. We are a political subdivision. We are a child, as it were, of these parents, and they decide what they think is best for us.
It's frustrating to me that we complain so much about federal oversight. But
Sure.
the state legislature's worse oversight on us than the feds are on them.
We
In
have this
many areas.
discussion every year at UAC.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
And it's, it's time for UAC and the league and the AOGs to all get together and
Saying no.
Well, I mean, Andrew could tell us better, but I think it's gonna be a much tougher year this year. And when you see, like I say, Jake Andre in the meeting today say, remove all barriers, you know exactly what he's saying.
Remove zoning.
Well, they want to remove the ability of the cities have to charge impact fees and use that as saying we made it too expensive. That's a fallacy as well.
Because
Because the market controls the price of it.
Absolutely.
So they mean by removing all barriers, allow developers to grow their solid profit that they want. Is that what that really means?
yes. I think that's where we're
Underlying,
going.
yeah, it's basically saying, look, you're 50,000 units short. We got all these people that
Every year.
can't find a place to live.
When does the number go down?
And so the only way that can change is
To
if
build
there
them
are
out.
more zones available for builders to build those 50,000 units. And that comes down to it's an oversight of the cities, and the cities are the problem. The cities are causing the problem, and the cities have to be reined in.
I don't we're causing the problem, but for good reason, because our residents expect it.
We know where the water is in the neighborhood. They assume there's gonna be water for as many they want to put in.
But it's this philosophy that, it's supply and demand, and that's not the case in my opinion with housing.
Now, the other thing that
They'll
was,
build it and they'll build it and it'll continue to go up in cost and you will never throw enough supply at it to change that.
the other thing that Jake said, and I don't know how many people caught this, but he said, you know, the other issue that we need to deal with is our sales tax revenue being 50% population and 50% point of sale. And the idea being is that they would change that so that it would allow for high density to go in. And if you don't put it in, where I'm going with this, if you don't do what we say, your sales tax revenues are going to be confiscated and given to somebody else who does it.
Sounds like someone needs to replace them.
I'd love to see that happen, actually.
Well, if we're collectively gonna change things in the legislature, that's, yeah, political action is the only way to do it. Yeah. And if the AOGs and MAG and the league all get together and start telling some of these guys, hey, we're gonna put somebody up against you in the next primary.
Well, and I
That's
think,
the only way to get their attention.
I think it's letting the public know that the legislature's pushing us to take away zoning, which is gonna affect you in higher density in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And, you
Well,
know,
one of our messages should be the filing period's coming up in March, and you do this to us, you will be challenged.
And I think you can look at, was it a couple of years ago when they tried to change some of the taxation, you know, and they actually made a change, and then there's a big outpouring.
Food
back,
tax.
and yeah,
And then they
And-
backed up
yeah.
because the
So,
public pushed on it.
yeah, so some people, sometimes they'll venture into things, but then, you know, I mean, definitely MAG does not want any land use authority. I spent too long time doing planning and attending planning commission meetings and city council meetings. That's the last.
you don't wanna be the planner for all
Sticks
So-
are coming after you.
Yeah, so, you know, I just don't understand why anybody would wish upon themselves to have local land use authority. But then again, it's, you know, it's like with building codes, right? And everybody complains about how terrible the building codes are and they have to do this and gotta do that until there's an earthquake. And the ones who complied with the building codes, their houses stand, and then it's like, oh, we need to, you know, do this more and more. And so it's.
I think if all association governments take a stand on any of those, that regardless of how it's set up, that has to matter.
Yeah, I think we need to be unified.
Yep.
And I think we need to be proactive and realize, not wait for them to pass the bill and say, here's what we're gonna hand you. I think we need to realize from day one, they are gonna go this direction. And we need to start organizing right now. Because they are gonna take our authority to plan our own cities away from us. And nobody knows your city better than your own city
those
government.
housewives.
Yeah, the housewives. Well, that's actually what he said.
Maybe we need to stick some housewives on them.
You know, if that was,
Baseball bats.
if that was recorded and made public, boy, there'd be a huge outcry.
Because I think the public will have a bigger effect. I mean, we need to be united. But I think we need to let the public know that they're, what they're going to do is increase your density.
I think we're in agreement on that.
Yeah, we'll follow through on that.
All right. Any other issues? I think that's a big one.
Yeah.
And getting unanimous opinion on that.
I
Yes,
had a chat from Mayor Mann
yes.
on here. He says BNC Road friends are also at risk for non-compliance with the state legislature.
Mm.
Oh, he said funds, not friends.
Yeah. Well, that'd be another thing they.
Yeah, that's another thing they would pull.
Extortion is
Yep.
what it is.
So you don't get your sales tax revenue, and you don't get your road revenue unless you obey. And that's actually called a stick and not a carrot.
Most dangerous 45 days for all the cities and counties in the state.
And say good luck driving through our county, 'cause
In shotguns?
we just quit plowing the roads today. You took our money.
You know, and there are legislators who have been in city councils and planning commissions and mayors, et cetera, and moved up into the legislature. So it's not unanimous.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know Senator Andrick well too. He's a good friend, and we agree and disagree on various things. But he is one that's maybe more vocal on a lot of issues that may not resonate with all in the Senate or all in the House.
I think Mike Kohler and Senator Winterton are pretty well on board with what we've been talking about. I think we have their
Both
support.
coming from.
Well, we
city,
need to
county
get
government.
more, we need to get more on board.
Yes, we do.
One of our
When are you gonna run against your buddy Jake there?
I don't know.
You have to move,
I'll
right?
have to think about that one.
You have to leave.
Haven't you?
I'd say one of our city councilmen is up at the state legislature, Doug Welton, so
Oh, good, yeah.
we can look into it.
Good, good. Well, and if he
That
could watch
surprises me.
as well,
What's that?
if he could watch as well, the minute he sees this start to
Well, and
pop up.
there's, also in our area, it's, Jeff, Burton, General Burton.
Mhm.
He'd be a good ally.
Yep. Yeah.
Cause it's gonna, I mean, they're already working on it now, and it's gonna pop up.
I'm sure they've seen it.
Mhm.
All right. Anything else on this issue?
And we do have a lobbyist, you know, on
Who's our lobbyist?
Dave Stewart. He's really good. So he's, you know, a top tier lobbyist, so we can, you know, we meet with him on a regular basis.
We need to put him together with the UAC lobbyist and league lobbyist.
Mhm.
So
Everybody's on the same message.
could we encourage that we have a meeting in the next month
Sure.
with these lobbyists, and go over this, and maybe, I don't know if we, I mean, you and the lobbyists go over this and maybe report back.
Mhm.
But, I think we need to start now, because the legislature is starting now.
And Noel and I have a UAC meeting in a couple of weeks.
Well, we've got the one down in
Yeah, St.
November,
George.
St. George, yeah.
And start figuring out which legislators would be with us and which would be against us. And then start a battle plan of what to do. Because if we're not proactive, we'll just get run over. And that's what's gonna happen.
I've mentioned that before in some of our UAC meetings.
I have too.
And we get nods, but we never do anything about it.
I talked about it at the homestead.
You know, we've had some bad apple cities and towns and counties that have done some things that, you know, can tick everybody off, and
That's
you know, they weren't doing it, so.
One of your times.
So anyway, but, you know, we don't.
Thank you, Mel Brown.
Exactly. Thank you, Noel Brown.
Yeah.
That's who gave it
I
to
ran into
us.
him last week.
Literally.
Oh, all right.
Were you in that meeting with him, the Hoytsville meeting?
Yes.
Because I saw him. He was in the group.
All right, I think we beat that issue to death, I think, and we think we know what we want to do. And now we're gonna get Mayor Mann, tell us about the holiday party.
We saw number
Number
7.
seven.
Sub number
7 and 8.
Oh. I jumped too far.
Yes.
We're excited about something. That's okay.
Party.
Yes, Yes, I skipped the important budget update. All right, Aging and Family Services.
Linda Cole is joining us via Zoom. Linda is the Deputy Director of Aging and Family Services.
Yeah, I think the holiday party might be more interesting than me. Maybe we should talk about that. So I'm just sharing my screen here real quick here. So it's nice to meet you all, albeit over Zoom. I was asked to represent aging, just to give you an overview of where we stand in our fiscal year 2022. So just looking at our budget here in 2022, the total over $5 million there in our budget. And I think this pie chart is really helpful in illustrating where the bulk of our funds come from with this Aging Older Americans Act funding. This covers a lot of programs, our congregate meal programs, home delivered meals, support services like legal, transportation, information and referral, caregiver support, the long-term care ombudsman program. Part of the funding for this year was actually one-time CDC funding to support vaccinations for older adults. So we were able to use one of our nurses from the aging program to move this initiative forward to help older adults who want information about the vaccine, where to get it, and maybe even some help with finding transportation in order to get vaccinated if they want to. The next slice of the pie, the Veterans Directed Care, just a really great program for veterans. It's a home and community-based program, and the purpose of it really is to help veterans who are at high risk of being institutionalized to be able to continue to live at home and participate in the community. And these home and community-based service programs are really win-win programs, because not only does it save the government money, because it's actually cheaper to have somebody in their home bringing services into them than it is to put them in a nursing home and pay for that. And then it's a quality of life thing for the veteran as well, because studies show that the vast majority of people want to be able to age at home for as long as they possibly can. The Medicaid waiver program is like the veterans program. It's a home and community-based program, the aging waiver that allows people to age at home, bringing services into them. The senior contributions, those are the meal contributions. So for Meals on Wheels and congregate meals, the senior has an option to make a voluntary contribution towards their meals, which they do, which is great, because that helps fund 20% of the total meal cost. And the total meal cost can include packaging, transportation, and so forth. So 20% of that is covered by the seniors themselves. The new, the SSBG, or the Social Service Block Grant, also known as Title 20, Aging supports this grant by helping to distribute these funds into the community to community of partners who apply for these grants. And they can be aging services, but they can also relate to broader human services as well. So some of the programs who've used these SSBG funds before have been foster grandparents, senior companions, RSVP, United Way provides senior transportation with these funds to the senior center. Women and children in crisis have even used these funds. The new Choice Waiver is another home and community-based service as well, another win-win program. But in this case, it takes individuals who are already living in long-term care, so in a nursing home, and it gives them the opportunity, if they qualify, to be able to move back into the community in either an assisted living or sometimes in their own homes. Because again, it's cheaper to have people in the community and bring services in than it is to institutionalize them. And it's a win for the person who's able to go back into the community as well. The RSVP, these are federal funds that cover the Retired Senior Volunteer Program. So individuals 50 and over can volunteer with these programs and be placed in a volunteer opportunity. I was just talking to the program manager today because I wanted to know how much her program was impacted with COVID. Did she lose all of her volunteers? And she said, no, not at all. The program remained quite robust, with the exception of the volunteers tutoring in schools. They had to scale that back during COVID, but it's back in place now and they're building it back up again. Our SVP provided 55 Meals on Wheels volunteers. They have quilters that volunteer to make quilts for the Quilt of Valor program. I'd never heard of that before, but they make quilts for veterans and then do a ceremony where they're presented with these quilts. They've provided drivers for medical appointments. I understand they have a program that's going really well in Summit County. And also friendly callers, which was a really important program throughout COVID for isolated older adults. The friendly callers would volunteer to call these individuals once a week and check in on them. And then these local funds are used for a variety of things. One of the things is to help frail seniors who don't have a lot of support, aren't on other services, to give them access to emergency alert buttons so that since they're home alone so much, there's somebody in contact with them. And the service also involves the provider actually calling and checking in with them, making sure the button works and checking on them as well as part of that. So it's kind of safety net sorts of funds that can be used to provide help for individuals who aren't able to be helped through other programs. So we're on track with our spending through the first quarter. There are some expenses that are one-time that kind of hit at the beginning of the first quarter, and then it kind of averages out over the course of the rest of the year. This is just a really great illustration of how the aging programs have been impacted by COVID. This example is from our meal programs, but all of our programs have had some sort of an impact. So if you look at 2019, the first quarter, they provided 60,000 plus meals. And in 2020, that essentially doubled. So now moving forward into 2021, we're still above the level pre-COVID. And they're anticipating that that will remain that way, primarily because of community awareness of the Meals on Wheels program now. There were lots of news stories about it, a lot of press given to the Meals on Wheels program through COVID. And so they anticipate that it will continue at these higher levels as well. So just to give you an idea of how many clients we were able to serve, just in looking back at numbers from 2021, the home delivered and / pickup meals, we added the pickup because during COVID, a lot of people were driving through it to the senior centers, picking their meals up at the senior centers, where they were able to serve 5,376 clients, 58 plus thousand meals. The in-home services, these are these home and community-based services, allowed 378 individuals to continue to age in their homes for longer. The Caregiver Support Program, which is a really robust program, was able to reach out to 8,331 individuals. Information and referral, we try to be a resource, even if people call and we can't help the people ourselves, we try to make sure that they get a referral to somebody who can. And so we're able to serve 69,000 plus individuals. The outreach is when we're reaching out into the community to give awareness of our programs. We reached 202 plus thousand individuals with that. The Long-Term Care Ombudsman program, which is actually the program I've managed the past 7 years. So this is my baby. And you can imagine that that was heavily impacted during COVID. Our jobs became very, very hard during COVID because we work primarily in long-term care facilities, nursing homes, and assisted livings, and we weren't able to go in any longer. And so we had to hustle really hard to figure out how to do our jobs through COVID. And when our numbers came out at the end of the year, I was really pleased to see these 389 cases and 689 consultations were actually in line with what we had done prior to COVID. And so that was just an example to me how hard we hustled to serve our clients and make sure that we weren't falling short. The health promotion served 141 individuals, and this was primarily through a senior fitness program where the seniors were able to set goals and track their goals and actually receive prizes along the way. And these sorts of programs are really important because if you'll notice, a lot of the services we provide are for more frail individuals. But as aging services, we have a mandate to serve all the aging individuals in the community. And so health promotion and things like this give us an opportunity to reach aging individuals who maybe don't need these other higher acuity services that we provide. So these last two ones, when somebody volunteers, we also consider that a service to them because people benefit when they volunteer. So 212 RSPV volunteers were able to benefit from that opportunity to volunteer. And on a side note, these 212 RSVP volunteers gave 10,900 volunteer hours in the past year. And then home delivered meals, the Meals on Wheel volunteers, we had 434 of those individuals who volunteered. And they were the lifesaver throughout COVID. With the double in numbers, they couldn't have reached the people who needed the meals without the volunteers. So I just wanted to share in closing a couple of big things that are coming up for aging services in the coming months. Well, I guess not coming months, November's right around the corner. We have the annual Caregiver Conference, and this is November 6th, and it will be online. They moved to online last year, and it was very successful. They pulled in more people than they had ever done in person. I think they had 300 people in attendance. They had people from out of state also joining. So anybody is welcome to join. The theme is finding joy in the journey, because they felt like, you know, after the year we've all had, it would be good to keep it very light and positive and encouraging for people. And you don't have to be a caregiver to attend either. The other thing is Medicare Enrollment, which is a really busy time for our senior health insurance program educators. And so they're hustling out in senior centers, 55+ communities, libraries, anybody who will host them. They'll go out to give information to people who need help in their Medicare enrollment. So that was all I had for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. Any questions? Hearing none, let's go on to community and economic development.
Okay. Before I present on the community economic development, I did want to mention that Heidi DeMarco, our aging director, has announced her retirement. She'll be retiring at the end of this year, December 31st, officially. So we are currently recruiting for that position. The job description is on our website. So if you have any recommendations for candidates, please do send them our way. And our first resume review is November 11th, so it's still a couple weeks before we start reviewing resumes. And we definitely thank Heidi for all of her work at MAG over the years.
She's completed 30 years with MAG.
Wow.
Okay, and so for community and economic development, Jessica Delora is the director of the department, and she is on a much deserved vacation. And so she asked me to step in and present her update. We have some slides.
My Zoom is frozen, so
Okay.
I can't share my screen, but we can. Run it in here, but I can't share it. Unless I leave the meeting real quick. Sorry.
Well, let me go ahead and just try to do some highlights.
I'd be happy to take this item.
Okay, yeah, that would be
I could
perfect.
give a budget update on the Department of Regional Planning, since I don't have any presentation, if that's all right.
Sure, Gore, go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Wright. This is in your packet. This is staff report 7C, if you want to refer to this. And just a real brief update, everything's tracking as planned within this category. This makes up about $23 million of our budget. This includes 21 million of the UDOT funds that was mentioned in the audit. Those funds are deposited at the state, and those get paid on a reimbursement basis. And so we're processing those invoices as those cities bill us for that. Everything looks good. We're currently down one staff person. We had our cartography guy, Corey Iman. He went to the church's office building up in Salt Lake for a new job, coordinating all their temple construction with his skill set. So he's happy up there, and we're happy that he's found that for himself. But we're down one person.
Wonder if he's been up to Osage County yet.
Yeah, I wonder, you have put a tracker on his car, see where he goes. So we've got that open slot right there. I have announced my retirement too in March of next year, so I'm gonna go through the legislative session. We're recruiting.
We can't lose you.
I was gonna say, that's a bad deal.
I know.
Heidi too.
Andrew, you don't all these people go.
But we're doing a good job of recruiting for this position. In fact, I think we made an offer today, and we're excited about that candidate. Hopefully we can make that public in the next couple of days. Continue that work. We did mention that the lobbyists that we've hired in here on fund number 102, we've got $200,000 there. 100 of that is from MAG's contribution, our contribution to the lobbyists. And we also have another 100 from Heber City for special projects that those guys are working on. If you guys ever have a need, to get that group on board with you and helping with any particular special project, please contact Michelle, Andrew, or myself. We can run that expense through this budget and have Dave work on that project for you.
So just out of curiosity, what is their special project?
They've got a couple sewer projects. They got a big sewer project they're working on.
So why are they lobbying?
There's an opportunity this year with as much money that there is at the state, that there may be some big infrastructure pieces.
I know they've got the whole west side of Heber, the sewer infrastructure is way outdated.
Yeah, it's an
They-
$80 million.
They apply for CDBG every year and get about a block done if they qualify.
Don't they have a huge development coming in?
Yeah, certainly the whole mountain.
Yeah,
So I don't know what they're doing with all their
like
impact fees there.
5,200 homes.
Yeah,
There's a lot
There's
coming.
a lot of new stuff, but there's a lot of old stuff that needs to be replaced, and that's what this project is.
They're
about.
also trying to get a CRA approved by the county and the school district
And we've done this in previous years.
to
If
help
you have a,
refurbish down towns, their idea.
if you have a special
Wow.
project, a heavy.
We did that
lift,
with 69 North and Orem.
We did that in Orem, and we've done it in Payson and other cities. So just let one of us know what happened.
Heber's gonna really change.
The whole county.
With that, I can keep that kind of brief unless you have questions about that budget item right there, but that's kind of a summary. We're on track.
Thank you,
Why
Sean.
have we only spent 15% of our RPO?
Yes, usually that RPO fund is 70,000 there. We haven't billed for some of the pass-through costs that we have. So we have Don Taylor in that, we have Nancy O'Toole in that, Bob
Okay.
Allen in that. And we've got a couple planning studies that we're doing. One of them is the housing piece. We've got in that as well.
Yeah,
So those
that's
bills
so
will
where
come
we're
in.
working, the housing authority.
Yeah.
And because the cities and the counties are in different fiscal years, we'll bill the cities August, September-ish of the year.
And then grab the
And
county.
then
in the first of the
counties.
year.
So it's into your next budget year.
Okay.
So some of those things will be a little lagging just because we bill the counties on
Yeah.
the calendar year.
Okay, Michelle.
Thank you. Okay, community economic development. Three main programs. We administer three different community development block grant programs for Utah County, Lehigh City, and the small cities program that covers Summit and Wasatch County. And then we have the heat and weatherization program that moved over to the Community Economic Development Department in July. And then under economic development, we have the Economic Development District and the Small Business Loan Fund. I'm going to be really brief on the CDBG because they're very specific to each region, but just they're all on the same cycle. So they're all currently spending down their FY21 projects that were awarded and began on July 1. And then now they're in the application phase for FY22. We don't know how much the allocations will be because HUD puts those numbers out in May, but
Usually around 600,000.
everything points to an increase from what we have. So it's, and we also have COVID money with all the CDBG programs, and I'm happy to report both all three, Utah County, Lehigh, and the Small Cities program are either entirely spent down or they're very close. So we're thrilled about that.
We really appreciate, we had that CV money. MAG had all 3 rounds, but especially the first round. We had ours all contracted, spent before most of the other area agencies even had a plan how they were gonna use it. MAG really was great on that. We got together
And our committee.
Mayor
said-
McCormick
Yep.
yeah,
They made some excellent, quick decisions and we were able to execute those.
and I think helped a lot of businesses with that first round especially.
So we're wrapping up the COVID CDBG money and then going back to our regular CDBG cycles.
One other thing there, but interrupting. We're looking this year, the CDBG program is kind of what we've been doing. Our priorities are water and sewer projects, because we have so many along here and in our county too. But the next year, we're looking at changing that more to a housing affordable. There's not enough money, you can't really, you do a block of sewer. We'd probably get more bang for a buck if we move it and try to get those things covered. So we're looking at change.
And Jess, our staff person that is over the Small Cities program, she is submitting a lot of grant applications to start a water and sewer revolving loan fund. And it would be 0 interest loans and grants for Summit and Wasatch County, so we can still fund water and sewer projects.
As well
in
as
the
another
area.
grant on top of CDBG for housing programs.
Yeah.
So those 2 grants she's working on.
So doing some great work. For the Economic Development District, we were able to obtain a grant through the EDA, approximately $486,000. We hired on a full-time staff person to oversee economic recovery and resilience. And we have had fantastic participation throughout the region. We hired a consultant to complete an economic recovery and resilience plan that finished up a few months ago. And now the committee has identified subcommittees. Those are all active and they're implementing the plan, which is great. Out of that plan, there's additional money coming available from the Economic Development Administration. And we just submitted a $500,000 planning grant to connect via transit Provo Airport through Provo Canyon, up to Heber, through Wasatch, through Summit County, and then dropping down into Salt Lake. And it's a study, it's transit, it's active transportation, and it's looking at how to bring that together and connect and move our workforce, move our tourists, move our residents.
Assume you're working with Caroline and Summit County.
Yes, yes.
Well, yes, it's this, there's the 500,000 planning, and then phase 2 is 100 million for implementation if we get it.
It is a very highly competitive grant. The state of Utah decided to put their energy towards coal communities to shift gear away from coal to recover those communities. But our Economic and Recovery Resilience Committee asked our staff to go ahead and submit this application. So that was turned in a couple weeks ago.
By the way, coal is now the new green energy. So the green energy that they had hoped to do everything with has gotten so expensive that they're now going to coal, and coal is bringing plants back online and more coal's being dug out of the ground because it's cheap and it's plentiful. And they found out that they can't go right to green direct. They're going to have to piecemeal it. Anyway, it's really interesting to read about, but there's a comeback of coal.
That is interesting. Will you call our EDA decision makers and steer them towards our projects?
Yeah.
And then briefly on our small business loan fund, we also received grant funding to hire a part-time coordinator. It's temporarily funded, but we're hoping to secure permanent funding. And she has been fantastic. She's making connections in the communities with the small businesses, the chambers, the small business development centers. She is submitting grants to increase our revolving loan fund size. And we're in this waiting period as we're not out of COVID yet, and a lot of businesses got a large influx of grant money or PPP loans. We haven't had a whole lot of interest in the small business loan fund, but we're using this downtime to reassess our program, look at our policies and procedures, inject more capital so we can have a larger loan fund. And then when businesses are ready to take out loans again, and can't get a loan from a bank, will be ready and up and ready to take applications. Heat, like I mentioned earlier, moved over to the CED department in the summer, and that is running very smoothly. Due to COVID, that program was extended year-round, and so the staff has been working. We've kept more staff on to handle that year-round. Additionally, they've added a water assistance program, and so they are working that into their projects as well. Staff is doing great. Weatherization. During that transition, Jessica really worked hard with the staff to come up with ideas for processes, set goals, implement the staff's ideas. We had some reorganization, and the staff is on fire. In September, for the first time since they took the work in-house, they met the state's goal for the weatherization program in our region, and so they were thrilled about that. Their next goal is to increase their job completion rate by 30 percentage points. And so they're doing really great work. I had the pleasure of being invited to go work with them one day, and that may or may not be me in the bunny suit in the attic, hoping I don't fall through the ceiling.
How many days did you itch after?
Luckily, they had me all set, so just my eyes itched for a couple hours
So
afterwards.
how many weatherization jobs are you doing?
You know, I will find out from Jessica and I'll get back to you on that because I don't know that offhand. And they would love to, like Meals on Wheels invites the mayors to deliver meals and come out in the community. They invite you to put on a bunny suit and come up in the attic, or just come and meet the team and see what kind of work they're doing in the homes. I know they're also working really hard to expand their reach up in Wasatch and Summit County.
What qualifies to have them come to them?
So it is income based, and then they come out and do an assessment of the home to see if they can provide, if the fixes that they can provide are less costly than the energy that they're losing. Yeah. So if they can have a cost savings.
What are
by
the
years.
income qualities?
I'll need to get back to you on that as well. I apologize. As I mentioned, Jessica's on vacation, and
I'm sure we have some potential customers. Really put it in context.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too, like with some of our aging programs and then our heat program, weatherization, there's a lot of people who, if you qualify for one, you qualify for the other programs. And so that's why it's a good fit for us, is because we've got those lists of people. Even when we do some of the job assistance, maybe somebody comes in and says, you know, hey, I lost my job and I can't pay my bills. We have heat workers that are in with DWS, so they can say, okay, once we're done with this utility bills, go across the hall and look for a job. And then we can also key them into weatherization because they can't pay their heat bill because they've got an old furnace that uses 3 times as
Well,
much.
weatherization is gonna put less of an impact on the heat program. They get that.
Yeah. And we do work with a lot of the jurisdictions to get the weatherization and heat programs advertised in their newsletters, to do outreaches that way as well. And that is all I have.
Very
Any
good.
questions? I might be able to answer them.
Any other questions? All right. In that case, we are up to Mayor Mann, who can tell us about the holiday party.
Yes, so I'm excited that we're having one. We missed last year and I really enjoy getting together with everybody. And just Andrew, for your benefit, my wife and I especially enjoy getting yelled at by the band to not talk so much.
Did you learn your lesson?
I don't know. I want to try it again, see if I can get another one.
That's so hilarious.
I think you were sitting with us, Julie, weren't you, when that happened?
Yeah. Yes, we were.
We were co-conspirators there.
It was a very memorable experience. It's the most talked about MAG Christmas party we've ever had.
It is a great venue. We opted, however, to hold it in Provo this year because we wanted to rotate the location and because we got a really good price at a restaurant called Molly's, which has really outstanding food. So I hope everyone will come. It's December 8th, and it is We'll start at 6:30. And I want to invite Sean to share something, share sound and optimize. So if you can just watch here, Sean, this is what we want you to do at our party here. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so Sean, are you game for that?
I'll start practicing.
Yes.
Hey, Mayor.
I think you look similar to him. You have a similar look. I'll send you the link.
I've been doing the happy dance for the past couple of weeks, so
Closer to
I
Mark.
know, you're retiring. It's so sad.
thank you, Mayor Man.
Hey, Mayor, have you got entertainment for the party?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Sean.
We had-
Sean was the entertainment.
I'm an alternate.
And I don't think he'll yell at you. Last year, we had lined up Jeff Carson, who's a cowboy poet here in the valley. Does a great job. We had him lined up, and then obviously because of COVID, we didn't have it. But I could check with him and see. Did we talk money? I don't think he was very.
We didn't, but we've already set up to have just a piano playing in the
Oh, okay.
background.
All right.
Yeah, that way so people can just, converse and not
She
have
won't
to.
yell.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She was really nice. We had someone playing.
Okay,
piano.
all right.
Okay, but thank
I just
you.
thought that out there if you needed time.
All right.
I could check with him.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Man.
You are welcome.
Last item, next meeting is February 24th at a location to be determined, which I assume will be down in
Close to you.
Utah County. Or is it my turn?
No, I'm just prolific.
All right. I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn. Unless there's any other.
I will move to adjourn.
Thank you.
I already moved, but you can second.
I'll second then.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. See you at the party.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.